pretty tough to be a firearms enthusiast and not constantly be looking for a Torx, a hex, a Phillips, some other kind of screw bit. And with Wheeler, they have a complete line of toolkits that can meet just about everybody's needs. Let's go take a look. And this is it. This is the complete line of Wheeler kits. We have everything from the Space Saver kit, which is going to be the smallest one, to the mid-level hex and Torx screwdriver set. We have the 100-piece fat wrench kit. We also have the fat sticks, which are going to be a set torque limit set. And then we have the benchtop screwdriver set, and that is a full line of Torx, metric, and standard hex. Let's take a look first at the Space Saver kit and see what it has to offer. And here we go. We're starting off with the Space Saver kit. This is by name obviously going to be the smallest kit that they offer, but it's going to be a great starting place for a lot of people that are just getting into firearms. It's going to have a good solid handle, which you're going to see in all of the kits here. It has a triangular design, which really gives you a good ability to grab on. I like that it gives me a place to put my thumb and rest everything. I'm not a big fan of round screwdrivers because with hands that hurt, and if you have arthritis, you know what I mean, it's harder to grip something that's round than something that is oddly shaped, like either a square or a triangle, but triangle is going to be the most preferred because it lets your hands put a hand down here, fingers down here, and then your thumb on top, and you can get good leverage. One complaint, or I shouldn't say complaint, but one wish that I had, and I've already told Wheeler this, is that I do wish that there was a hole through the handle so that I could stick something like a small Phillips head or an Allen key in there to give me some additional leverage in a case that I need to break something free. And that's true of any of the kits that we're going to take a look at that have a handle like this. But otherwise, I think it's a really good design. It's a solid feel. And even without having the ability to stick, something in there for leverage, I got really tight with this and was able to break free a pretty good amount of screws with it. The case, while, your typical folding clamshell type case, is actually kind of a step up. It does have a nice set of snaps on it instead of just a typical clamshell design where it's going to just catch on something and potentially break open or snap or break when it gets brittle over time. And the biggest thing that I like about this case is that when you look at how the bits are in here, they have just enough tension in this injected molded case to hold on to your bits, but they are not going to grip them too much. And that is honestly the biggest gripe I have with even the current kit that I'm using from another company, is that I have to really fight to pull out a bit, and it just destroys my hands if I'm doing a lot of work. So I do appreciate that I can easily pull one in and out, but it's still going to hold them in relatively well. It's going to have flatheads, Phillips, metric, standard, so flathead, Phillips, metric, standard, and Torx, sorry. And, it's going to have the most popular sizes. Obviously, in this compact design, you're not going to have every size that you're looking for. But again, if you're just getting started, it's going to cover most of them. Now, one thing to consider, and this goes for any of the kits that we're going to be looking at, if you are not familiar with what makes a gunsmithing toolkit different than something you would buy at your local hardware store, it's how the flatheads especially are ground. And it's done with what's called hollow ground versus chisel ground. So if you go and pick up normal screwdrivers that are flat from a hardware store, they are going to be, pointed, right? And that is great for normal screws, carpentry screws, stuff like that. But machine screws that are flat are going to be a true kind of a really nice U shape. And if you put a chisel ground in there, they're going to wiggle. You're not going to get a good fit. And that's ultimately where you're going to strip out screws or get frustrated. Or worse yet, on a nice gun, you're going to bugger the screws. And I will just be the first to admit, I learned the hard way decades ago at a gun store where I was removing the grips on a legit single action Army and used a regular screwdriver without realizing there was a difference and buggered up that screw. And I can tell you the guys in my shop never let me live it down. It was a hard lesson to learn, but I've never forgotten it, and it's always made me appreciate why hollow ground is the way to go. Because when they make these flatheads, they actually make them rectangular with a flat top. So when it goes into that flathead screw, it is tight, and it works right so that you can actually loosen and tighten without buggering anything up. So that's really important to think about if you're buying. All the cases that we're going to look at are going to have a chart here of what sizes are available. I don't know. I don't typically look at the charts. It's nice to have, but I'm usually a see if it fits in the hole until I get one that sticks. You know, because typically I don't know what size the screw is, but if something calls for a certain size, it is nice to be able to reference it and see if you have the proper size there. Now that we've looked at the starter kit here, let's look at the next one up, which is going to offer even more for us. And this is it, the 65-piece hex and Torx kit. Obviously with this one here, you are getting a wider range or more options in the metric, standard, flathead, even into the Phillips. And then you're getting 20 micro bits. And this is what makes the kit really unique, is you're getting this little micro screwdriver. And that is going to let you really work on small, delicate pieces if you need to, even into electronics. So if you do a lot of different things and maybe you don't want to have a couple different kinds of kits, this actually gets you a gunsmithing kit and a small electronics kit, or if you're doing very small detailed work on guns and you need little micro bits, it just gives you a lot of flexibility. It's like 55 bucks, give or take, and is probably, you know, short of getting something with a torque wrench in it, going to be the best balance that Wheeler offers. All the same features with the case. You've got the little chart in here, and of course you have the easy to pull out bits and whatnot. They also include this little cavity so you could put screws that you're pulling out and it'll hold them in there so you can drop them in. And that's kind of a nice little add-on. You can obviously throw, if you have more parts, into the lid here as well. So that's going to be the 65-piece. Now let's take a look at the big ol' 100-piece kit. And this is it. This is the giant 100-piece fat wrench kit. It is going to have pretty much anything you need to do in order to get your gunsmithing job done. The only thing it won't have is the micro bits that we saw in the 65-piece kit. But what you get in this one is a huge assortment of hex, Torx, Phillips, flatheads, and it gives you probably the biggest assortment I've seen, because I've ordered individual wrenches, you know, like kits that are just T-handle wrenches and other gunsmithing kits, and they typically max out at somewhere around 9 to 11 sizes in standard or metric. Metric, you typically get less than standard. In fact, a lot of kits I've ordered in the past might have 11 standard, 9 metric, 9 Torx. Not this one. This one you're getting 13 of the metric, 13 standard, 13 Torx, and then even more in the flathead. I think it's upwards of 20 something, closer to 30 actually. And then you've got extended bits, so you've got big long, about 5 different sizes of these hex bits. You've got the Torx bits that have a magnetic holder in them. And then of course we get into the fat wrench, which is going to let you set a torque setting of 10 up to 65 inch-pounds. And that's going to be great for putting scope rings, scope mounts, actions, all kinds of things that require a repeatable torque setting. Now, in the past, I've had a torque wrench from Wheeler. It was the fat wrench. It was one of their older models that came in a little clamshell kit with maybe half a dozen pieces to it. And they've come a long way with how they feel, how they operate. And while the old one worked, you know, it did what it was supposed to, this one is actually a little bit easier to read, I find, than the old one, which was one of my big complaints. It does have this triangular grip on it, and it's a little more rubberized. So they've, you know, made some subtle changes to it that I think are a good improvement. You also get an extension if you need it here. So you've got your hex extension, you've got a coupler conversion here. So it's just a lot of great stuff that if you are getting started or you're just looking to kind of have all of your tools in one place, this is a pretty good place to go. And as with the others, you have the full chart that shows you everything that is inside of it. So now, what if you want something where you have more specific torque and you're not having to adjust it all the time? Well, I'm going to show you the fat sticks. Before I do though, let me remind you, if you have the fat wrench, you want to make sure that you are loosening it all the way back to 0 each time. Some of you may have seen me put it away and mentally I said, oh no, I need to make sure I set this back to 0. But when you have a torque wrench like this, you want to make sure that you dial it all the way back. It releases the mechanism, it keeps it more accurate, and make sure that you're getting as close to the number you're looking to over time. Now, let's take a look at those fat sticks. And this here is the Fat Sticks kit. And this is going to give you exact torque settings over 5 different wrenches. And what they do is they're going to give you this T-handle, and it interchanges with any of their inserts here. And what you've got is you've got a set, and I'll just show you here, you've got a set torque rating, and it's going to be the most popular for rings, actions, bases, all that kind of stuff. And you've got 65 pounds, 45 pounds, 35 pounds, 25 pounds, and 15 pounds. And that's going to be inch pounds, of course. They simply snap into the handle here, and they give you a really good torque on it. And when you're using it, it's going to break at that torque setting, plus or minus the calibration, but it's going to give you that torque setting every time you use it. They also include a 1/2 inch because a lot of your scope bases are going to be 1/2 inch. And then if you need it, they do have obviously an extension. And I know there's a lot of debate over whether extensions are going to ruin your torque settings. And I personally, I know there's a lot of ways that it can be looked at, but I'm just telling you, if you're consistent with how you're doing it, then that's all that matters. So if I set this and I'm using the extension and I want, the 65 inch-pounds on my action and I'm using the extension, then guess what? Every time I use it, it's going to be consistent, and that's what matters. I also highly doubt there's going to be a massive difference between using the extension and not using the extension, at least in our world that we are looking for. And that goes for, I do that with any of my torque kits. And again, I've been blasted for it in the past, but the truth is I get really good consistent results as long as I'm using the same set of tools every time to get that same setting. And this is going to be in a nice little compact kit. It actually has mollies that you could hook it up to if you wanted to put it onto something that was molly ready. It's got a little bit of storage here, although to be fair, I'm not sure exactly what you'd put in it. But as a dedicated torque kit, I think this goes a long ways. Not everybody wants an adjustable torque wrench, especially because sometimes it's hard to tell if you're hitting an exact number, exactly the same every time. With these, you're hitting the exact number every time. And that's really the advantage to it. These are going to run you a little bit under $100, which isn't bad for a 5-piece kit. If you bought individual torque limiters from anybody else, you'd be easily looking at that much per torque limiter. And those are going to be a lot bigger and bulkier, not a nice little kit like this. Now that we've looked at the Fat Sticks, we're going to look at the final offering, which is the benchtop screwdriver kit. Finally, we have the benchtop screwdriver kit. And this is actually a pretty cool kit. I was probably most excited when I unboxed this one because I've always wanted something that I could leave on top of my bench, have the different sizes that I need, and not get frustrated with certain things, and I'm going to explain in a second here. Now, there are certainly other companies, including Wheeler, that have like a T-handle kit, and they are a benchtop type set, and those things work fine. And I've obviously bought some let's call them lesser quality brands in a T-handle kit that sat on my bench, but they have the most frustrating base ever where you just can't ever get your pieces in there. Not to mention the quality of metal that is used, especially on smaller sizes, leads to it getting kind of buggered at the end and rounded off over time. They use an incredibly high quality steel on these, as with all of their bits. And whether you have a small, tiny little one or one of their giant ones, it's going to give you a lot of good long lifetime use. But I really like this kit because you're getting, again, compared to most of the kits, in fact, just about any kit that I've looked at, you're getting the largest number of pieces, 10, 10, and 10 of each size here. Now, while I've had some kits where you might get 11 on the standard, like I talked about, you get 9 on metric and 9 on Torx. This is going to give you a solid 10, 10, and 10, which so far, having used this a little bit, it has given me the widest range without really lacking for anything. I do use the big one on a couple of my vise setups to torque down when I'm changing barrels. And then obviously you can get all the way down into the smaller sizes. And I even use this on some of my presses when I'm changing conversion kits and stuff like that. So I think this is a really nice, they're all a triangle handle. That's going to be similar to the socket handle that we looked at earlier. And something else about this, you'll notice that they are in a particular order. So these are hex and then metric and then standard, but you can actually separate these and you can choose to move them around. So if you want to put these in a particular place, or if you just want them in a certain order, you can definitely rearrange them however you want them to go, so that you can always have maybe standard and then metric and then hex or whatever it is. Just like all of the other kits, especially on some of the larger ones, I do wish that there was a way to stick another wrench across, you know, so that you could gain some leverage with it. But it's a minor gripe. But here's where these really shine, and I'm just going to connect that. Here's where these really shine. You can see that even backwards, I am able to put these wrenches in and have them go where they are supposed to. No frustrating little metal stand where you're trying to line things up. They go back in and they stay where they're supposed to. And that is just, for me, if you've ever used any kind of benchtop screwdriver kit, Allen kit, whatever it is, and you've tried putting those back in, they tend to go wonky, they don't get back in the hole right, and these are just about the easiest thing to get centered up and to drop them in, and that is worth all the money for me right there. You can obviously hang these on the wall. They do have the, you know, like standard hangers that you could put like a screw on the wall and hang them if you wanted to. For me, I'm just gonna leave them on the bench. But that is going to be the final offering. So you can see Wheeler has got just about anything you'd need, from a small little travel or bench kit all the way up to a full-size screwdriver kit or a giant torque setting kit. And that is, you know, I think that's a great way to go, because it lets somebody really choose what they need, what's going to fit for what they want to do, and they can kind of go from there. With that, I hope this helps. I hope you're able to pick something that fits into your shop, and I hope you can get out and shoot, have some fun. We will talk soon.